My roommate had an abortion at an illegal clinic and died of massive bleeding. Before she died, she sent me a message. Don't look in the mirror at 10 o'clock at night. Don't get close to men in black clothes. They will make you pregnant. There are no cats or babies in the dormitory. If you hear their cries, you must kill them immediately. The illegal clinic is a place to remove filth, but never go there. At this moment, my roommate's body is lying at the school gate. Her body is covered with a blood-stained white cloth, and in her hand, hanging down to the ground, she is holding a bloody, closed-eyed baby. Don't trust the teachers. Don't refuse the teachers. Go to bed on time at 10 o'clock. Don't look in the mirror. Don't look under the bed. The cafeteria is safe, but don't eat any meat. If you encounter a pregnant female classmate, help the ones in red clothes. Stay away from the ones in green clothes. Cut off one of my fingers. My flesh will protect you. These messages were sent to me by my roommate, Amy White, but she died of massive bleeding. Her body was already stiff, so how could she send me a message? I couldn't figure out why. I only felt fear and weirdness. Go back to your dormitory and rest. Don't crowd around here. At this time, the school leaders and a group of security guards came. The security guards were waving iron rods, driving away the students surrounding Amy's body. After everyone dispersed, they put Amy's body into a body bag and carried it to the school basement. I frowned. The school basement is a place for storing bodies used for anatomy classes. But why did the school leaders not preserve the death scene, call the police, or notify the family when they saw a student die? Move aside. 2 security guards carrying the body came towards the school gate behind me, expressionless. Stay away from the body. It's bad luck. Although they said this, I felt that their steps were deliberately aiming to bump into me. My heart skipped a beat. I suddenly noticed that the security guards were wearing black clothes. Don't get close to men in black clothes. They will make you pregnant. This is one of the rules Amy sent me in a text message. What are you doing? I shouted at the security guards, trying to make them stop. I wanted to run, but my body was unresponsive, unable to move. Seeing the security guards carrying Amy's body getting closer and closer to me. Even my arms felt the cold touch of the corpse. Extreme fear made my blood run cold. Suddenly I exploded with strength and ran a few meters away frantically. Clenching my fists, I shouted angrily, "Are you crazy? Bumping into me with a corpse on purpose?" The security guard said nothing, still carrying the body towards the school. However, their heads turned towards me in unison, staring at me with pale eyes. Their eyes were strange, inverted from normal people's eyes. Their eyeballs were completely black, with only a sharp white dot in the center of the pupil. It was extremely creepy. I dared not shout anymore, nor did I dare to look at them. I instinctively lowered my head. Suddenly, someone tugged at my clothes. I turned my face and saw another roommate, Jane Brown, who was 10 centimeters shorter than me. She clutched my dress tightly, whispering, "Kathleen, you were avoiding the security guards in black clothes just now. Did you receive the message Amy sent?" I hesitated for a moment and asked her, "Did you receive it too?" Jane Brown took out her phone and showed it to me. It displayed a series of rules exactly like mine. She enlarged the font and asked me, "Do you believe these rules?" "I don't believe them. We study medicine. We should know that men and women can only get pregnant by doing that." I shook my head and continued, "The rules also tell me to cut off Amy's finger to save my life. But that's mutilating a corpse. It's illegal. I'll go to jail. I absolutely can't follow the rules. If you don't follow the rules, you'll be the next to die." Jane Brown was a little anxious, her voice very low. "Kathleen, don't you notice something very strange about this school? In our class, 7 girls have already died from bleeding during pregnancy, but neither the police nor their families came to the school to investigate." "Jane, stop it." I took a deep breath. "It's all a coincidence. They died from bleeding during pregnancy because they messed around. As long as we study hard, nothing will happen." Jane Brown glared at me angrily. "Originally, I wanted to form an alliance with you to survive in these bizarre rules, but I really didn't expect you to be so stupid, really hopeless. I'm tired. I want to sleep." I found an excuse and quickened my pace towards the school dormitory. Of course, I believed the message Amy sent, so I needed to follow the rule of going to bed on time at 10 o'clock. Also, I hadn't forgotten the part about cutting off the finger to save my life. At this moment, in my skirt pocket, my hand was tightly clutching one of Amy's severed fingers. I have a hobby of performing magic. Magicians can turn a handkerchief into a dove. The trick is to be fast. fast enough that the human eye can't see the magician pull the dove from their coat. And I was fast enough. When the security guards charged at me, I had already cut off one of Amy's fingers faster than a second. My sweaty palm was tightly glued to the bloody severed finger. I kept chanting in my heart, "Thank you, Amy." When I returned to the dormitory, it was already 9:50. I couldn't even bother to wash up, didn't even take off my clothes, and lay directly on the bed. Ding! My phone vibrated again. I opened my eyes. Even though Amy was dead, she was still sending me messages. Never leave the school. After 10 o'clock, lock the door. No matter what happens outside, don't open the door. Pay attention to the teacher's feet. If her feet are hooves, she's infected. Stay away from her. Believe the words of the dead. I memorized these rules and got up to lock the dormitory door. But at this moment, Jane Brown and another roommate, Lisa Smith, pushed the door open. Jane Brown looked at me suspiciously and said, "Kathleen, you're lying to me." I shrugged. "Lying about what?" Jane Brown sneered. "You said you don't believe the rules, but you locked the door before 10 o'clock according to the rules." I ignored her, climbed up to the upper bunk, and closed my eyes to rest. Jane Brown and I used to be best friends. She was very smart. If I allied with her, we could survive these terrifying rules better. But I didn't like her, because she had once seduced my boyfriend. While my mind was wandering, there was a sudden knock on the door. Lisa Smith blurted out, "Who is it? Knocking at this hour? Why aren't you asleep?" Jane Brown immediately pulled Lisa Smith, putting a finger to her lips, gesturing for silence. But Lisa Smith continued talking. "Jane, it's not that I'm not following the rules, but Amy just sent me a message saying that if someone knocks at night, we must respond." I couldn't help but feel curious. The rules Amy sent to Jane Brown and me were exactly the same, but why were Lisa Smith's different? "It's me." The familiar voice of our counselor came from outside the door. "You know, a lot of students have died recently. The school leaders asked me to come and talk to you, to give you some psychological counseling." As soon as she finished speaking, I felt my phone vibrating with the 10 o'clock alarm I had set. Now, we absolutely couldn't open the door. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and prepared to sleep, ignoring the commotion outside. Lisa Smith hesitated for a while. "Teacher, we are all asleep. Can you come tomorrow?" "No." The counselor's voice turned icy cold. "You must open the door. Don't trust the teachers. Don't refuse the teachers." I suddenly felt strange. This conflicted with the rule of don't open the door after 10. What should we do? After a moment, I realized these two rules were not contradictory. As long as we didn't respond to the teacher after 10 o'clock, she wouldn't demand us to open the door. What should I do? Lisa Smith was clearly panicking. She shook Jane Brown's arm and asked, "The teacher wants me to open the door, should I?" Jane Brown, strictly following the rules, was also pretending to sleep like me, not responding to Lisa Smith. "Open the door! Open it now!" Outside, the teacher's hand knocked on the door rhythmically like a clockwork. Lisa Smith was almost in tears, her face twisted with fear. "Jane, save me! Save me!" I felt something was wrong. What did Lisa Smith mean by this? Was she in danger? Click. The door was opened. Lisa Smith's voice was filled with terror. I couldn't control myself. My hand moved on its own and opened the door. "Good. You're an obedient child." The counselor's voice was as cold as a machine. She entered the dormitory and the sound of high heels clicking on the floor echoed. But I remembered clearly the teacher was 7 months pregnant. She never wore high heels. Suddenly I thought of the rule. Pay attention to the teacher's feet. If her feet are hooves, she's infected. Stay away from her. Could it be that the teacher's feet had turned into hooves? Thinking of a pair of white bare hooves pressing on a person's leg, I shivered all over. "All right, stop pretending to sleep." At this moment, the counselor's voice floated to my ear like a ghost. She was very close to me, as if her whole face was leaning against mine. I could even feel the touch of her skin and a strong stench, like the smell of rotting meat. I hadn't heard the sound of climbing the bed frame. How did she get up here? My pores were trembling with fear, but I gritted my teeth, pretending to be asleep. "I know you're not asleep." The counselor's voice was still cold and oppressive. "You cut the dead person's finger. Hand it over now. Don't make me angry." The counselor blew on my face, the stench almost suffocating me. "I'll give you 3 seconds. Hand over the finger now." The counselor's voice was like a siren song, ghostly and magical, forcing me to follow her instructions. Cold sweat seeped from my skin, soaking my back. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself not to be bewitched. "I'll give it, I'll give it." Just as I was about to lose control, Lisa Smith's tearful voice appeared. As soon as she spoke, the touch of the counselor's skin disappeared. The counselor laughed sharply. "Good, you're a very obedient child." "Ah!" Lisa Smith's terrified scream echoed. In just a few seconds, her desperate cries disappeared. Instead came the sound of bones being chewed, like crunching. A few warm drops splashed on my face. They were incredibly smelly. Obviously, Lisa Smith was dead. In our dormitory of 4, Amy hated Lisa Smith the most, because Lisa Smith had a big mouth, spreading rumors about Amy's pregnancy. So after her death, Amy gave Lisa Smith false rules to punish her. Lisa Smith's death was deserved. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but feel more fear and awe for the rules. 10 minutes later, the eerie chewing sounds stopped. The counselor burped contentedly. "Good. You all slept on time? I won't disturb you anymore." Creak. The dormitory door was opened and then closed again. I sighed in relief. The dormitory was quiet again. So quiet. I could only hear my own breathing. This made it hard for me to sleep. I felt the urge to pee. I pressed my lower abdomen, wishing I had slapped myself earlier for not going to the bathroom before bed. "Lisa Smith is dead." As I hesitated whether to wet the bed, Jane Brown's sigh broke the silence. "Lisa Smith. She died in our place." I was already annoyed by my bladder and found Jane Brown's chatter even more irritating. There was a rustling sound. Jane Brown climbed up the bed frame, onto my bed. "Stop pretending to sleep. The counselor is gone." She patted my face. Before we returned to the dormitory, I took Lisa Smith to the basement to cut off Amy's finger for protection. I remained silent, but my legs instinctively curled up. I really couldn't hold it anymore. I couldn't open my eyes, so I decided to wet the bed. Guess what I found when I lifted the cloth? I found that all 10 of Amy's fingers had been cut off. Her toes were also cut off. There was no good flesh on her body. She looked like a human swine. My heart skipped a beat. I only cut one of Amy's fingers. Why were all her fingers and toes gone? Could it be that after Amy's death, she sent the rules not only to Jane Brown and me, but to everyone in the school? "I noticed you were very close to the security guards carrying the body. Did you cut Amy's finger then?" Jane Brown resentfully pinched my closed eyelids. "Give me her finger now." She used a lot of force. It hurt. My bladder was already full, my body tense. Now, Jane Brown, like a fly, kept pestering me, trying to snatch my protective finger. This made me extremely angry. Unable to control myself, I slapped her hard. "Get lost." He. Jane Brown's voice disappeared instantly. Instead, the counselor's sharp laughter filled the room. I felt a chill all over. I saw the counselor in a dark green embroidered gown, her head tilted, her red eyes bulging, inching closer to my face. "I've been waiting for you for a long time. I knew you weren't asleep." My heart pounded uncontrollably, as if it would jump out of my throat at any moment. I really didn't expect the counselor to be so cunning. She could pretend to leave after closing the door, and even imitate Jane Brown's voice. What should I do now? Be killed by the counselor like Lisa Smith? Hand over the finger quickly. The counselor got closer and closer. Her face looked like it had a hole. Upon closer inspection, I realized she had no nose, no mouth, only 2 broken eyes. Facing life and death, I suddenly remembered the rules. Go to bed on time at 10. Go to bed on time. In common sense, sleeping means closing your eyes, but the rules didn't specify that you had to sleep with your eyes closed. In ancient times, there was a general, Zheng Fei, who slept with his eyes open. So even though I had opened my eyes, it didn't count as breaking the rules. Thinking of this, I opened my eyes, turned sideways, avoiding looking at the counselor's bloody face, and made snoring sounds. The counselor's neck stretched out, landing on my pillow. Her eyes didn't move, staring at me. Stop pretending to sleep. I know you're awake. She didn't eat me. I was overjoyed. The counselor's words were a test, so my guess was correct. As long as the counselor wasn't sure if I was awake, she couldn't harm me. Thus, the counselor and I stared at each other for more than an hour. When I was too tired to keep my eyes open, I saw her neck slowly split open. Drip. A drop of stinky blood fell on my pillow and hair. I was terrified but remained motionless. I saw the counselor's neck split like a tree branch. 2 heads grew out of the split. One stared at me, the other at Jane Brown on the lower bunk. That night, Jane Brown was also tense with fear. She hadn't slept either. I saw the sweat on her forehead and her trembling blanket. Stop pretending to sleep. The counselor used the same cold tone towards Jane Brown. Ah! Jane Brown suddenly threw off her blanket, screaming in fear. He. The counselor's head staring at me instantly retracted, merging into one. I sighed in relief. Now, the counselor's attention was entirely on Jane Brown. Pretending to sleep is not being a good child. The counselor's mouth slowly opened, like a snake's mouth, expanding to 180 degrees. Don't eat me! Jane Brown screamed and ran towards me. I clenched my fists, wanting to slap her. That bitch, she wanted to drag me down before she died. She's awake too. Why don't you eat her? Jane Brown, who had been my roommate for 3 years, clearly knew I was awake, but the counselor ignored her. As the counselor's neck stretched, her open mouth about to devour Jane Brown. No. Just as Jane Brown was about to die, she suddenly fell to the ground, her eyes wide open, not saying a word. With Jane Brown's action, the counselor returned to her human form. I was secretly surprised. Why didn't she eat Jane Brown? This made me review the rules carefully again. The rules said, go to bed on time at 10. 10 o'clock on time. Jane Brown and I had clearly met this requirement, but the word sleep was too broad, with room for interpretation. For example, sleep could mean real sleep, or pretending to sleep. It could be sleeping with eyes open or closed. Then, a flash of inspiration hit me. Jane Brown's action of getting up and screaming could be seen as sleepwalking. Sleepwalking was also a form of deep sleep. Therefore, the counselor didn't eat Jane Brown. After not getting what she wanted from Jane Brown and me, the counselor left. Jane Brown continued to lie on the floor, pretending to sleep like me, but her eyes were fixed on me. I smirked at her. Neither of us spoke. Until dawn, I finally relaxed and fell asleep. But barely an hour later, my phone's alarm for class rang. Jane Brown was also awakened by the alarm. Rubbing my eyes, I got up, seeing in the morning light a pile of bloody hair and clothes on the floor. Jane Brown lay among the hair. I glanced at her. You were pretty smart, knowing to use sleepwalking to deceive the counselor. That inspiration came from your sleeping with your eyes open. Jane Brown disdainfully tossed aside the hair, looking at me. There were 4 of us, 2 are dead. Now we should put aside our differences, cooperate, and survive. I smiled slightly. Okay. Then I asked, I'm curious. Before Lisa Smith died, she said she had Amy's finger. Is that true? Jane Brown nodded. Yes. Lisa Smith and I went to the basement to get the finger, but many students were already there fighting over Amy's flesh. She looked puzzled. The rules said the finger could protect us, but Lisa Smith had Amy's finger and still got eaten by the counselor. I frowned, suddenly realizing that my relationship with Amy wasn't particularly close. To be more precise, among the 4 of us in the dormitory, Amy had the worst relationship with Lisa Smith. So, Amy gave Lisa Smith the wrong rules to punish her. Relatively speaking, Jane Brown and I maintained a superficial relationship with Amy, but it didn't reach the level of being close friends. Therefore, the rules Amy sent us might be a mix of truth and falsehood. I sighed, feeling a bit regretful. If I had treated Amy sincerely before she died, maybe the rules she gave me would all be true. Thinking of this, I looked at Jane Brown. The rules Amy gave us aren't all true. Jane Brown sneered. I was too naive. I was curious. How so? Just like you said, Amy's rules have truth and lies. Jane Brown walked to the sink, turned on the faucet, and picked up a toothbrush. I should have realized this earlier. After all, who would want to have their body mutilated after death, left in pieces? I fell silent. When faced with life and death, people can be very greedy. That's why they would do something as foolish as cutting off a dead person's finger. After sorting out my thoughts, I picked up my phone, planning to call the police for help. But I found my phone had no signal. So, should I leave the school and go to the police station? But the rules said not to leave the school. Was this rule true or false? I didn't know. I thought about urging Jane Brown to try. But before I could speak, she said, "I just checked. There's no signal on my phone either. The school's network is probably blocked. Why don't you go to the police station outside?" I laughed. She was really playing her cards well. Ding, ding, ding. The first class bell of the school rang. I lay on the bed, not moving an inch. What's the point of going to class when you're about to die? Just as I was about to give up, I saw a message from the counselor in the class group chat. "Please attend class on time. Those who attend class on time are good children." I was furious. Damn it, I couldn't even give up. Without even washing up, I grabbed the knife from under my pillow and ran frantically to the classroom. As soon as I sat down, I felt my phone vibrate with a message from Amy. "Attend class on time. Don't skip class. Don't make eye contact with the teacher. If you're unlucky enough to see her red eyes, kill her immediately. It's okay to lie. Don't turn on the electric fan." These rules were mixed with truth and lies. I had to follow them. But I couldn't follow them all blindly. The first class was ethics, but there were only a dozen students in the class. At the beginning of the semester, there were over 40 students. I realized that those 30 or so students who had died probably broke the rules in various ways. The teacher was wearing a black dress, but she was a female teacher. I felt a bit relieved, thinking I wouldn't get pregnant by getting close to her. The teacher wore black-framed glasses and seemed normal. She lectured as usual, reading from the textbook. Until near the end of the class, she suddenly pushed her glasses up and asked us, "Do you have any dreams?" None of the dozen students raised their hands to answer. The teacher seemed displeased. She frowned. "Let's narrow down the scope. Do you have any career aspirations? For example, what do you want to do in the future?" The students all kept their heads down, looking at their desks. "Why is no one speaking?" The teacher looked at us with a strange expression and said, "Since no one is eager to speak, I'll call on someone." Without waiting for a response, she pointed to a boy nearby. The teacher asked, "What do you want to do in the future?" The boy was trembling all over but didn't say a word. After a few seconds, the teacher's expression grew more and more angry. Not being proactive isn't being a good child. As soon as she finished speaking, her mouth opened wide, swallowing the boy whole. "Burp!" The teacher contentedly burped. Then she spat out a blood-stained clump of short hair. Ah! Some students, unable to bear the pressure, screamed. But no one left the classroom early. It wasn't time for class to end yet. Leaving early would also lead to death. Then, you answer my question. The teacher wiped her lips, smiling at the girl sitting next to the now dead boy. The girl was shaking, tears almost falling. I want to leave here." "This student, you're not answering my question. I asked about your career aspirations, but you said you want to leave here." The teacher's eyes grew redder, her eyeballs looking like a pool of blood, extremely terrifying. At the same time, I noticed her feet starting to change. Her feet, which had been together in an odd position, were now slowly lifting. Then they turned into pale, hoof-like feet. My heart skipped a beat. The rules said, don't make eye contact with the teacher. If you see her red eyes, kill her immediately. Now, the teacher's eyes were red. So, should I kill her immediately? Could I kill her? No, I couldn't do that. I clenched the knife in my hand. The teacher's eyes were red, but she hadn't made eye contact with me. That meant I was safe. Clearly, you weren't paying attention in class. As she spoke, the teacher's hooves clicked on the floor, making a chilling sound. She walked to the girl. Students who don't pay attention in class aren't good children. "Go to hell!" the girl suddenly screamed, pulling a sharp knife from her desk and stabbing the teacher. I took a deep breath. This girl also received Amy's rules. She wanted to kill the teacher to protect herself. But to my utter despair, the knife, although stabbed into the teacher, did not harm her. Her flesh was pierced, but no blood flowed from the wound. Resisting? Ha ha ha! The teacher looked extremely excited, her long, red tongue licking the girl's body. "Since you want to leave, I'll grant your wish." Then she clapped her hands. 2 security guards in black clothes walked over. They grabbed the girl's arms without saying a word. "Let me go!" The girl struggled desperately, but it was no use. Then something even more terrifying happened. After the security guards grabbed her, her belly visibly swelled. In less than a minute, her belly expanded as if she was 9 months pregnant. My face turned pale with fright. Amy's rule said, "Don't get close to men in black clothes, they will make you pregnant." This rule was true. It hurts. The girl was in extreme pain, her belly still swelling. Her clothes were torn. I saw the bulging veins under her pale skin. Something seemed to be wriggling inside. Snap! With a crisp sound, her belly burst, revealing a black cat. The cat was alive, its mouth stained red, crying like a baby. Ah! All the students screamed in panic and fear. Ding, ding, ding! At this moment, the class bell rang. The teacher smiled. "Class is over. See you in the next class." After the teacher left, I lay on my desk, pale. I had a strong premonition. In this game of rules, fewer and fewer people would survive. My nerves were constantly on edge. I wanted to survive, but I knew I couldn't hold on much longer. I really didn't know how to end these terrifying rules. Soon, the second class began. This class was physical education. The PE teacher acted as usual, having us do some warm-up exercises. After we finished, he said, "Exercise is important for our health. We need to exercise more. Do you agree, students?" Having learned from the previous class, the students eagerly responded, "Yes." I mouthed the word "yes," but made no sound. The PE teacher seemed satisfied. He nodded and said, "Well then, let's run laps. How many laps do you want to run?" My eyelids twitched instantly. I felt the PE teacher's request for laps wouldn't be simple. If he said hundreds of laps, we would have to comply. If any student didn't complete it, they would surely die. What should I do? My brain cells were racing, and suddenly I had a risky idea. I quickly raised my hand. "Teacher, I have something to say." The PE teacher frowned, walking towards me. "What is it?" Blushing, I stammered, I have my period. My stomach hurts. I want to rest." The PE teacher scrutinized me but said nothing. Next to me, Jane Brown also raised her hand. "Teacher, I have the same issue." A few seconds later, the PE teacher nodded. "All right, you two can rest." As soon as he finished speaking, a bunch of students raised their hands. "Teacher, I have a stomachache too." The PE teacher clearly grew impatient, his eyes turning red. Lying isn't being a good child. Then 2 more security guards in black clothes appeared. Jane Brown and I ran frantically off the track. As we left, I heard the screams of girls in pain, the sound of something bursting, and the cries of babies. "Where are you planning to go?" After leaving the sports field, Jane Brown clutched her waist, panting heavily. "It's class time. The dormitory door is locked by the dormitory manager." I stopped and looked helplessly at the blue sky. The school is so big, but there is no place for me. After a long time, I calmed my breathing and said, "Let's go to the cafeteria." The rules said the cafeteria was safe, although I didn't fully trust the rules now, but I was indeed hungry. Outside the school cafeteria, Jane Brown and I peeked in. Probably because it was still class time, there weren't many students in the cafeteria, but it looked safe inside. No hoofed feet, no cats crying like babies. And most importantly, I smelled the aroma of food wafting from inside. My stomach growled with hunger. The intense hunger made me push the door open and enter the cafeteria. Jane Brown followed closely behind. Entering the cafeteria, my phone again received rules from Amy. The cafeteria provides food 24 hours a day. There are all kinds of delicacies here, but please don't eat any meat. I looked towards the food counters and saw that all the food here was meat. "Auntie, isn't there any vegetarian food here?" I asked cautiously to the cafeteria server. "Vegetarian food is not nutritious." The server smiled, scooping a large ladle of honey-glazed braised pork. "It's better to eat meat. Look how delicious it is." The meat indeed looked very delicious. The aroma was enticing, but I didn't dare to eat it. Swallowing my saliva, I continued to ask, "Auntie, I'm on a diet recently. I'd like to eat vegetarian food. Where can I find some?" The server's face grew darker. "The school cares about the students' nutrition, so only at noon, exactly at 12, will there be a serving of vegetables." I continued to inquire, "Besides vegetables, is there no other vegetarian food?" The server didn't respond anymore. We'll just have to bear with it. Jane Brown said, there's only an hour left until noon. We can wait and surely get some vegetables. Time ticked by. At exactly 12, vegetables were served at the counter. I just wanted to get some vegetables, but saw that the few students scattered around earlier swarmed the vegetable counter like they were on a drug. They were obviously prepared, scrambling for the vegetables. In less than a minute, the vegetables were all gone. Holding my growling stomach, I felt a deep despair. I couldn't get any vegetables, but I couldn't eat meat either. What should I do? Suddenly, I thought of an alternative. What about eggs? Could I eat eggs? No, absolutely not. Eggs can hatch into chicks, so they are also meat. During this time, other students who had just finished class also flooded into the cafeteria. They also received the rule about not eating meat. Complaints filled the air. We can't eat meat, but there's no vegetarian food here. Are they trying to starve us? The rules might not all be true. I don't care. The most terrible death is starving to death. I'd rather die full. A large number of students put meat on their plates. They ate the meat greedily and ravenously. After eating, they seemed to have no issues. Could it be that the rule about not eating meat in the cafeteria was false? Facing the aroma of meat, my determination began to crumble. Can you help me? At this moment, a heavily pregnant woman in a red dress and another woman in a green dress both asked for my help. I looked at them warily. What do you need help with? I'm hungry and want to eat some meat. The woman in the red dress looked at me pitifully with a tray in her hand. But my belly is too big. I'm about to give birth. I can't queue for food. Can you get some meat for me? The woman in the green dress said the same, but she asked, can you get some vegetables for me? I remembered the rules. If you encounter a pregnant female classmate, help the ones in red clothes stay away from the ones in green clothes. My heart was in unprecedented conflict. Meat was forbidden, but the woman in the red dress asked me to get her meat. Should I help her? If I refused, would I be punished? Okay, I'll get you some meat. Jane Brown took the tray from the woman in the red dress and walked to the meat counter. Soon, she returned with a plate full of delicious-looking meat. Thank you. The woman in the red dress smiled and said, can you do me another favor? Jane Brown replied without hesitation, of course. The woman in the red dress said, I want to eat your internal organs. Can you give them to me? Jane Brown's face turned pale with fear, and she ran away frantically. The woman in the red dress kept smiling but didn't harm Jane Brown. Please help me. The woman in the green dress looked at me pitifully. I'm starving. Please help me get some vegetables. I kept a safe distance from her, maintaining silence, pretending to be deaf and dumb, ignoring her pleas. The woman in the green dress pestered me for about 2 hours, and seeing I didn't respond, she went to ask other students for help. An hour later, the school's afternoon class bell rang. The counselor again sent a message in the class group chat. Attend class on time, that's being a good child. I sighed and headed towards the classroom with my growling stomach. Jane Brown followed. Wait for me. We had just left the cafeteria when we saw the woman in the red dress running out like a mad woman. Before I could react, I saw her pounce on Jane Brown, biting her wildly. I was stunned and felt a chill all over. Soon, Jane Brown was eaten beyond recognition. Before she died, she shouted at me, "Go to the illegal clinic, it's the only place to survive." The illegal clinic was set up in a nearby hotel. Amy's rules said, don't leave the school. The illegal clinic is a place to remove filth, but never go there. Should I go to the illegal clinic? Could I trust Jane Brown's words? I didn't know what to do. All 3 of my roommates were dead. I felt an unprecedented fear. When I got to the classroom, I found that all the students, regardless of gender, had swollen bellies. Almost all at the same time, their bellies had swelled. How did this happen to them? I tried to ask my classmates. According to the timetable, this class was nursing, but the teacher asked us to draw instead. This teacher seemed to pay special attention to me, glaring at me strictly. I dared not make any move, but the teacher didn't let me go. She pointed at me and said, "Kathleen, please draw your dead roommate." I was studying medicine. I couldn't draw, but I still forced myself to draw a trembling image of Jane Brown. Before the class ended, the teacher took away my drawing and frowned, her eyes turning red. "You drew terribly." The teacher's body began to deform with her words. Her feet turned into hooves, and her mouth opened wider. She wanted to eat me. No, I didn't want to die. I couldn't hold back anymore and ran out of the classroom. Skipping class isn't being a good child. The teacher's neck stretched infinitely, following closely behind me. At that moment, I realized I couldn't escape. I could only fight back, but knives couldn't kill the teacher. So how could I defend myself? I knew knives couldn't kill the teacher. Suddenly, I remembered Amy's rules might not all be true. Don't turn on the electric fan. Never mind. I took a deep breath and desperately turned on the electric fan switch. As the fan blades spun, they quickly fell, accurately killing the teacher. As soon as the teacher died, her body turned into a black cat and disappeared. I collapsed on the ground, exhausted. I escaped this time. But what about next time? After this class, I went to the cafeteria, driven by hunger. But the cafeteria was filled with meat dishes. I endured the hunger and returned to the dormitory. At night, the counselor routinely knocked on the door, trying to come in, but I ignored her. I was safe for the night. In the next day's classes, whenever the teacher tried to give me trouble, I turned on the electric fan switch. It seemed like I could survive. But I was very hungry. Very, very hungry. After 3 days of enduring, I finally got some vegetables, but a small portion of vegetables wasn't enough. I don't remember when, but my body controlled my mind, bringing me to the meat counter. I got a serving of roasted chicken, a full plate. I ate the chicken voraciously. Then, I felt my belly swell. After eating, I realized the other students' swollen bellies were due to eating the cafeteria meat. Men in black clothes couldn't be approached. Likewise, cafeteria meat couldn't be eaten. Both would cause pregnancy. Days passed. My belly grew bigger and bigger. Through the thin layer of my belly, I could faintly feel claws wriggling inside. Were those claws from a cat? Holding my swollen belly, I felt an unprecedented discomfort and despair. Finally, I realized that no matter what, I would die. When my belly grew so big that it seemed like I was about to give birth, I left the school and went to the illegal clinic. The abortion doctors at the illegal clinic wore masks and sunglasses. I couldn't see the abortion doctors at the illegal clinic wore masks and sunglasses. I couldn't see their faces clearly. When they saw me, they looked at me with disdain. Here for an abortion, huh? Get on the table. I clutched my swollen belly and followed their instructions. In the operating room, they still wore masks and sunglasses. The pain in my belly and their mocking words made me furious. Who performs surgery wearing sunglasses? While they were not paying attention, I pulled off one of the doctor's sunglasses and mask and was horrified to see that their face was entirely covered in dark, furry hair. No, they looked more like a cat's head on a human's neck. I screamed and tried to get up. No, I don't want an abortion. He. They took off their gloves, revealing furry paws, and pinned me down, preventing me from moving. Their mouths emitted sharp, eerie laughter. This is fun, really fun. Later, my consciousness gradually faded. I felt something being removed from my body. I felt my blood growing cold. I felt death. I died, just like Amy, died from an abortion at the illegal clinic. Epilogue. Another world had arrived, and the evil god descended upon the human world. This was a game where the evil god toyed with ants. Humans were the ants. The evil god appeared to give survival rules, but in reality, whether the rules were followed or not, the outcome was always death.